Ellen Bancroft had never thought herself destined for grand adventures. By day, she served as the volunteer archivist at Foxglove Falls' modest historical society, meticulously cataloguing vintage postcards and handwritten diaries. By night, she read well-worn history books and sipped chamomile tea by the warmth of a flickering fireplace. The calm routine suited her, much like the tranquil pace of Foxglove Falls itself, an unassuming town with narrow cobblestone streets, neat picket fences, and a secret or two murmured among the ivy-laced porches. Most people there found contentment in small talk at the bakery or in gossip exchanged at the rose-themed cafe near the park. Ellen lived for scraps of local lore, dusty volumes, and the promise of a small discovery hidden in the attic of a grandparent's century-old house. One Tuesday evening, after locking the heavy oak door to the Historical Society, Ellen realized she had left her notebook behind. The Society's archival room, located in the building's damp basement, had no windows, only the flicker of fluorescent lights. She made her way back down the wrought iron staircase, the echo of her footsteps resonating in the still hallway. With a gentle push, she opened the archival room door. That was when she spotted them, a cluster of wooden crates stacked haphazardly in a corner she knew should have been empty. She was sure no deliveries had been scheduled. Stepping closer, she saw each crate bore a neatly stenciled inventory number. It struck her as odd. Those codes belonged to artifacts from the local museum, not the Historical Society's records. Her heart fluttered with curiosity and alarm. Had they been moved down here by mistake? Or was something else at play? Earlier in the week, she had heard bizarre rumors circulating through the town's small circles, whispers of missing antiques, strangely absent from the museum. She'd only paid partial attention, as local stories often inflated with every retelling. Yet these crates seemed to confirm that something was indeed amiss. Tucked behind a damaged cabinet, there were more wooden boxes, nearly hidden in the shadows. The largest crate had a faint label reading Artifact, 24, 19th century, emerald necklace, but the latch was dangerously half open. Even though she knew better than to temper with property that wasn't hers, curiosity overcame her. With a cautious tug, she lifted the lid just enough to peek inside. Any initial excitement was overshadowed by the fact that the crate was empty. Her mind raced. If the crate was labeled Artifact 24, but held no artifact, where had the emerald necklace gone? And how had the crates even ended up in her archival room? The Historical Society and the local museum, while both devoted to preserving the past, generally kept their collections separate. Ellen hurriedly scribbled notes in her small spiral pad, writing down the numbers from each crate. She tiptoed around them, hunting for clues, scraps of paper, shipping receipts, something that could justify their presence. Nothing surfaced, save for the unshakable sense that a secret was humming beneath the surface of her quiet town. Unable to sleep that night, Ellen reread her notes multiple times. She remembered that the museum's biggest sponsor was a wealthy newcomer named Henry Fitch. He was tall and debonair, with a grin that charmed donors and a knack for making quick acquaintances. In a town steeped in history, everyone was intrigued by Fitch's rumored ambitions to modernize Foxglove Falls. Perhaps those missing antiques and Fitch's big plans had something to do with each other. Then again, it might be an unfair assumption. If she wanted answers, speculating was fruitless. She had to go straight to the museum's director, Regina Tully, a stern but fair curator rumored to guard the institution's exhibits like a dragon hoarding treasure. The next morning, Ellen arrived at the museum. The building was a grand structure of polished marble, an unusual sight among the old cottages and tree-shaded lanes. She approached Regina's office in the West Wing, passing display cases containing pioneer-era quilts and vintage silverware. Yet for all its grandeur, the museum felt vacant. Where were the curious tourists, the school children on field trips? She was struck by a hush that permeated the halls. It was almost as if the museum was holding its breath. Regina greeted her with a perfunctory nod, her reading glasses perched on the bridge of her nose. "I've heard some troubling reports," Ellen began, her voice trembling. "Certain items might be missing from your inventory. I stumbled on these mysterious crates labeled with your numbers in the Society's cellar." Regina's expression changed from stiff politeness to guarded wariness. She admitted that yes, there had been suspicious discrepancies in the museum's cataloguing system for weeks. On top of that, donations slated for upcoming exhibits had gone missing, only to reappear without explanation in the back rooms, though sometimes not all the pieces returned. Regina confided she was close to contacting the authorities, but had no idea whom to suspect. The conversation was cut short by a sharp knock at the office door. In walked Henry Fitch, wearing a crisp-tailored suit matched with a casual air of confidence. Regina closed a ledger on her desk, hiding its contents from his eyes. Noticing Ellen, Fitch flashed his practiced smile. He asked if they were discussing the expansions for the museum, or possibly the upcoming fundraiser. His eyes, though friendly, darted around the room as though scanning for something. With Regina's lips pressed into a thin line, Ellen offered a polite greeting but provided no further details. She sensed pulling Fitch into the conversation could complicate matters. Ellen's next stop took her across the cobblestone square to Allie Monroe's antique shop. Allie was her oldest friend, a fount of knowledge when it came to vintage items. If stolen artifacts were floating around town, Allie might have caught a glimpse of them perusing estate sales or rummaging through yard sale treasures. As soon as Ellen entered the warm-lit shop, the aromatic blend of cinnamon potpourri and old books enveloped her. Allie, dressed in her usual bohemian attire, beamed at her. The shop's walls were lined with carefully arranged curiosities: porcelain dolls, silver spoons, old clocks, and embroidered tablecloths tagged with delicate calligraphy. "What scandal is swirling in Foxglove Falls today?" Allie joked, knowing Ellen's proclivity for digging up local intrigue. Ellen detailed the predicament: the out-of-place crates, the missing artifact that should have contained an emerald necklace, and the museum's confusion. Allie frowned. She had recently acquired an old cameo brooch from an estate sale. The seller told her it was a piece from the museum's personal collection, but had no receipt or proof. At the time, Allie thought it was just another family heirloom. Now, her tone grew concerned as she recalled the unusual circumstances. With her curiosity piqued as well, Allie pledged to keep an ear out for any unscrupulous transactions or shady sellers. The puzzle turned ever more convoluted. As Ellen followed leads for the better part of a week, she confronted outdated inventory lists at the museum, cross-checked them with the Historical Society's records, and found that more artifacts had vanished than the whispering populace suspected. Silver candlesticks from the 1800s, a sapphire-studded brooch rumoured to have royal ties, and even a set of Civil War letters once proudly displayed in the museum's front case, all were unaccounted for. Strangely, the museum's official statements never spoke of theft. It seemed that items were quietly being removed and then either hastily returned or stashed somewhere else. The question was, why? And who was orchestrating this? One crisp afternoon, she travelled to the outskirts of town, to where old farmland gave way to rolling hills. There, a certain local rumour suggested an abandoned barn might be serving as a rendezvous for illicit transactions. The wooden structure stood half-collapsed on a lonely plot of tall grass, the wind rattling the bare branches overhead. With steady resolve, she peered inside the barn's shadowy interior, only to be startled by another presence. A figure emerged, a stooped man with salt-and-pepper hair, recognized by locals as Wayne Cooper. Hunched over a battered table, Wayne nearly dropped the small object he was examining under the glare of a lantern. Ellen coughed lightly to announce herself, and he spun around in alarm. Ellen recalled that Wayne once worked for the museum as a guard, let go after some budget cuts. He wore an expression of guilt mixed with fear. "Ellen, you shouldn't be here," he murmured, trying to tuck something into his coat pocket. Ellen's heart pounded. In a half-broken crate before him lay a piece of glimmering metal, possibly part of a silver tea set. She pressed him for the truth, but he grew agitated, fumbling for words. Finally, he offered a terse explanation. "I messed up. Someone roped me into this, said I'd get a cut if I helped borrow a few artifacts from the museum. But I swear, I never intended for anything to get stolen permanently. They promised everything would be returned." A swirl of complex emotions passed over his face. She could hear regret in his words. Ellen placed a cautious hand on Wayne's shoulder, urging him to tell her more. He confessed he'd been approached months ago with an offer to store museum items off the books. He was certain it had something to do with forging a secret, profitable sale, but had never dug into the details. He only knew his instructions came from a third party, someone working behind the scenes, but he had encountered a bag full of documents referencing Henry Fitch, a name that struck fear into Wayne. "He's powerful," Wayne muttered, "getting on his bad side. It could ruin me. I have a family." Ellen's suspicions ballooned, merging into a frightening mosaic of stolen artifacts and unscrupulous land deals. The next day, Ellen crafted a plan. She would try to confirm Fitch's role by inviting him to a genealogical research session under the guise of assisting with his family history. Fitch had boasted to donors about his lineage, claiming he descended from a Revolutionary War hero. If she made it sound like a public relations win for Fitch, perhaps he would divulge a clue or slip up on details. And if he was hiding something, he might reveal it under the right kind of prodding. They met at the Historical Society's reading room, quiet, filled with tall windows that allowed sunshine to spill onto the polished wooden tables. Ellen had carefully laid out binders she claimed contained the Fitch family's genealogical records. Fitch arrived looking pleased, apparently enjoying the idea of linking his name to local history. She began politely, going over some legitimate ancestry details, retrieving old census data and property deeds. As they sifted through the pages, Ellen mentioned the rumor that an ancestor had once donated priceless artifacts to the museum. She watched him carefully, seeking any flicker of nervousness. He smiled, cool and unperturbed. If he was guilty, he hid it well. But then fate intervened. A volunteer from the Historical Society burst in, his voice quavering with excitement. "Ellen," he exclaimed, "you must come see this. We found a hidden compartment in the basement. It's full of some old boxes." The volunteer froze when he noticed Fitch, quickly stammering an apology and clamming up. Ellen used the interruption as a reason to excuse herself and hurried downstairs. When she arrived at the newly discovered section, she felt her pulse quicken. The small, concealed nook held more crates, and these ones, upon lifting their lids, contained an unsettling mix of oddities. Tarnished jewelry, brass antiques, and even a bundle of letters with the museum's seal. Some looked centuries old, while others were more modern. Her mind reeled. This was a veritable hoard of stolen artifacts stashed away right beneath her feet. Fitch's presence upstairs loomed in her mind. She asked the volunteer to guard the find while she calmly returned to Fitch, who was by now growing suspicious. He closed a genealogy binder and asked what the disturbance was about. Ellen tried to maintain an even tone, saying, "We've discovered some old items for the Historical Society's records." Fitch's outwardly polite smile faltered momentarily. She realized she needed to protect this valuable find, so she ended their session under the pretext of reorganizing the archival room. As soon as Fitch stepped outside, she alerted Regina Tully and asked Ali to come at once. If this was proof of a criminal scheme, they had to act before everything disappeared again. That evening, under the dim glow of a single overhead light in the Historical Society's basement, Ellen, Regina, and Ali gathered around the hoard, handling each item carefully. They confirmed many were indeed from the museum's missing list. Some had been taken years ago, well past the time frame Wayne had mentioned. This was not a recent or spontaneous crime, but a carefully orchestrated venture that spanned significant time. Regina's hands trembled as she lifted an antique cameo that once hung in the museum's front display. It was rumoured to have belonged to a turn-of-the-century socialite who'd financed the first settlement in the region. Ali discovered a ledger tucked away in a wooden box. The ledger, labelled Transactions, contained a cryptic series of coded notes and sums of money. It was dense, but one name, written over and over, jolted her: Henry Fitch. However, the ledger also included the initials LM. In several places where larger sums were recorded, Ellie and Regina could not determine who LM might be. It didn't match any museum employees. Ellen suggested they consider local families or board members, but nothing clicked immediately. At least it confirmed Fitch was heavily involved. The big question was, who else? Swallowing her hesitation, Ellen arranged a secret meeting with Wayne at Ali's antique shop after closing hours. She showed him the ledger, pointing to the mysterious LM. Wayne shook his head, his brow knitted in confusion. "I never dealt with anyone by that name," he insisted. He only knew Fitch gave the orders while an unknown intermediary relayed them to Wayne, but there was a local lawyer who sometimes visited Fitch's estate. Lucas Myers. Could that be him? The possibility clicked. Myers kept a low profile but was known to partner with powerful figures in real estate deals. The ledger's references to land purchases and artifact transactions might suggest Myers was brokering behind the scenes, laundering the stolen items or using them as leverage in deals. As the puzzle pieces converged, Ellen feared time was running short. Although they had boxes of evidence, Fitch was influential enough to spin any charges away without solid proof that he and Myers had orchestrated the thefts. If they could get one undeniable confession or catch them in the act, that would be the key. So Ellen concocted a final plan. She called Fitch and claimed she had uncovered a rare 18th century artifact that might interest him for a special exhibit. She teased that it could draw national attention and boost his prestige. She arranged a meeting on neutral ground, the old abandoned barn on the outskirts. Perhaps a suspicious location, but it was also largely deserted, the perfect stage for revealing the truth. On the appointed evening, Ellen arrived early, accompanied quietly by Ali and Regina, who hid themselves in the shadows. Wayne, who felt responsible for his role, volunteered to help. They placed a battered trunk in the center of the barn, pretended it contained a priceless piece. Flickering lanterns provided the only light. Shortly, Fitch arrived with Myers in tow. They stepped inside, Fitch's face half concealed by the shifting lantern glow. Ellen put on her best performance, praising the item's historical significance and claiming she intended to donate it for the right price, under the table. As she opened the trunk, Myers advanced, eyes gleaming greedily. Ellen noted how Fitch's posture stiffened, the flicker of a smile turning predatory. Before any exchange could take place, Wayne emerged from the shadows. Myers cursed, stepping back defensively. Fitch's eyes flickered with anger. Ellen seized the moment and declared, "We know about the crates in the Historical Society's basement. We have your coded ledger. We know about the missing items. It's over." Fitch's suave demeanor shattered. He accused them of trespassing on his private arrangements, insisting they knew nothing of the bigger picture. But from a corner, Regina's quiet voice rose. "You stole these treasures from our museum, destroyed our heritage for profit." Myers shook his head vehemently, but Wayne stepped forward, recounting how Myers had threatened him into assisting. A rush of relief flooded Ellen. She was no detective, but at last the truth was standing in full view. Ali and Regina produced phones, ready to call the authorities if Fitch and Myers tried to escape. Though Fitch sneered, he appeared cornered. With a deep, angry sigh, he admitted that his grand plans for Foxglove Falls required more capital than he could muster. He saw the museum's well-preserved artifacts as an untapped resource. Selling them on the black market, then quietly returning some items so no one would suspect permanent theft, felt genius to him. Myers would handle the legal front, while Wayne was roped in for the grunt work. But Wanda, one of the museum's archivists, had grown suspicious, so Fitch had begun moving the stash around. The operation was meant to remain a quiet tide that ebbed and flowed under the town's unsuspecting gaze, until he had enough money to fund real estate deals that would transform the sleepy hamlet into a lucrative commercial hub. In the tense stillness, footsteps approached the barn door. 2 uniformed police officers, summoned by an anonymous tip from Allie, entered with flashlights raised, the beams dancing across piles of dusty crates. Fitch tried to speak. More threats, but it rang hollow. Without struggle, the officers took Fitch and Myers into custody, ensuring the stolen artifacts would be seized as evidence. Wayne, showing remorse, offered what he knew and pleaded guilty to his part. Though his resourcefulness had contributed to the wrongdoing, he'd helped bring the operation down in the end. Once Fitch and Myers were guided outside, the air in the barn felt lighter, though it still carried the musty scent of old wood. Ellen leaned against a broken beam, her pulse still racing. In all her life, she'd never imagined she would unravel such a tangled conspiracy. Regina, in tears of relief, hugged Ellen and Allie, thanking them for saving the museum from crippling losses. The news would stun the entire community, but at least Foxglove Falls could reclaim the stolen legacy that had nearly slipped through its grasp. In the following weeks, the police took detailed statements. Reporters from nearby cities came sniffing around for interviews. The museum's stolen artifacts were painstakingly inventoried, and many made their triumphant return to gleaming display cases, no longer in danger of vanishing into the shadows. Wayne's testimony, denouncing Fitch's manipulative approach, gained him some sympathy, though he still faced legal repercussions. Regina hoped the museum board might show compassion in light of his role exposing the crime. Meanwhile, Meyer spent his days in custody, presumably regretting his involvement. As for Ellen, her life resumed its gentler pace, though now she was hailed as a local heroine. Whenever she ambled through the town square, neighbors waved, bakery patrons offered her slices of warm pie, and the Historical Society members treated her with new respect. The next time a local rummage sale turned up old boxes, they called Ellen first, making sure these finds were legitimate. The museum's board asked her assistance in a thorough recataloguing of every artifact, a task she accepted with both excitement and a measure of pride. She was more than an idle history buff now, she was their trusted sleuth. She realized she had acted upon something beyond curiosity. She was driven by a love for the tapestry of memory that every artifact represented. The stolen items were pieces of Foxglove Falls' collective story, reminders of what had come before and who the townsfolk were. In saving them, she was helping preserve the soul of the community, and in unmasking those who threatened that legacy, she served as an unspoken guardian of local heritage. Within months, any sign of Fitch's proposed developments disappeared. The fields on the outskirts remained rolling green instead of bulldozed construction sites. Tourists continued to wander Foxglove Falls' quaint streets, sampling scones at the bakery, admiring antique shops and marveling at the museum's newly recovered exhibits. Even as the autumn leaves turned fiery orange, rumor had it new donors were eager to support the museum's expansions. On ethical terms this time. The fiasco had shown Foxglove Falls that progress could be made without sacrificing history's treasures. Late one afternoon, with the crisp breeze hinting that winter was near, Ellen returned to the Historical Society's cellar, where she had discovered the first crates. She gently traced her hand along the wall where the hidden nook had been found. Sunlight filtered through a high window, revealing the little motes of dust swirling in the air. A pang of gratitude filled her chest as she recalled her nights spent wrestling with the puzzle, the days spent chasing half-buried clues. The town was safe again, its secrets revealed for the better. She picked up her well-worn notebook, closed it, and allowed herself a small smile. There would be more mysteries to solve someday, more tales hidden between the lines of old diaries and the hush of forgotten rooms. But for now, She relished the calm satisfaction of a story well told and a history saved.